Hey everyone, welcome back to Faith IRL, where we talk about real faith in real life. Today we are going to dive into a topic that everyone knows, everyone talks about it, everyone needs it, but very few people truly understand love. Not the kind of love we see on social media platforms, in movies, or in TV shows. Not the love that changes depending on our circumstances. We're going to talk about biblical love. And honestly, I think this conversation is more important now than ever. We are living in a world where everyone is connected, but few people truly love each other. We have, come to an age where we have more followers than true friends. We are based more upon, how people view us rather than what is real. More communication, but less understanding. That is the kind of world that we're living in. To further unpack this topic, we have, a very good friend of mine over here. Welcome, Sam, to this episode.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
I'm excited for this conversation because, love is not something, that is a nice Christian idea,
Yeah,
because Jesus actually says, love would be the defining mark of all his followers.
of course. Yeah,
So let's get into it.
sure.
When you look at today's culture, the way the world is, going about,
Hmm.
what are some signs that you can see, where people are actually, in a way starving for that love?
Yeah, I think we can see it kind of like in the redefinition of love. A lot of people have started to redefine love because they can't find it themselves.
Hmm.
So, love nowadays means tolerating whatever behaviors you might have normalized within your lives. I think that's one of the biggest points where we can see people kind of like their inner self crying out
Yeah.
for that, like that there's a hole inside them that needs to be filled, and they're trying to fill it with different things, and
Yeah.
they're trying to tell them, okay, maybe this is not love. Let me redefine it in a way that's suitable for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the main areas where we can see people actively crying out for love. And I think that's where we as Christians should come in and, kind of like be the teachers of, showing the path really.
Yeah. That is, that is really true what you have said.
Yeah.
Another sign that you can actually see is, the way people actually, seek online validation.
Yeah.
That is a big red flag
Of
in a
course.
way, you could say. People, want to feel actually seen.
Yeah.
They actually, because when you go on social media, you can only see photos where they, even look at our own social media platforms. We
Yeah.
always, our posts will be photos that actually show us in a good angle,
Yeah.
where you'll try to hide all your bold spots and everything. And that
Course.
is the thing, because we are basically seeking people to see it and like it.
Yeah.
That is, they want to know in a way, we all want to know that we matter in one way or another.
Yeah. That
And
validation.
yeah,
Yeah.
true. And underneath all this, is that seeking for love in a
Course.
way.
Yeah.
So, when we come to the Bible itself, because you said, we should actually be, teachers of love.
Teachers of love.
In First John chapter 4, verses 8, God actually, the Bible, it says, God is love.
Yeah.
Not that, God, has love or that God shows love,
Yeah.
but it actually says that God is love.
Yeah.
So whenever we try to separate, love from God,
Yeah.
that is when we try to create, our own versions of love.
Versions of love. Yeah. That's right.
And that becomes, really self-centered in a way. We try to focus on showing that, my love is greater than anything else in this world.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you hit it spot on. Actually, I think taking God out of love is the biggest mistake we've made as mankind. I think the pure definition of love, if we go to First Corinthians, for example, it says love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast, it does not envy. These are all characteristics of love,
Mhm.
and when we take the God out of love, we replace God with something else, and I think that's where I was starting off with by saying we redefine love.
Yeah.
We use, it could be our love could be based on money, it could be based on looks,
Yeah.
status, and if we go into the online world today, we see people's value being set on all these different things,
Mhm.
and that is what's drawing people to them. And I don't think that is true love. True love, as defined by the Bible, is what was demonstrated through Jesus Christ
Yeah.
when he died on the cross for sins. And I've said this before, and I think I probably heard it from somewhere, and that is Jesus is the only hero in history to die for the villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't find that even in today's movies or TV shows. You wouldn't find a hero dying for the bad
Villain.
guy, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't find that.
Yeah.
So that love is unconditional, meaning
Mm.
there's no tick boxes so
Yeah.
that we need to fill in. There's no checklist for it. It's
Yeah.
purely based on love. And that
Yeah.
is what is defined by God, I believe.
Yeah, true. That is actually a very deep thought that you have actually put across now.
Yeah.
That, it's first time that a hero actually dies for a villain,
Yeah.
that is something that we do not think about.
Yeah.
We generally, just.
And we are the villain.
Yeah, we are
We're the villain
villains
in the story.
Yeah, because, even after knowing that love that
Yeah.
God had towards us, how many times have we actually sinned
Yeah.
and gone back in our own ways?
Exactly. Yeah.
Another question that I want to put across to
Sure.
you, in this present world,
Mhm.
many people define love,
Mhm.
as simply accepting everything
Mhm.
someone does.
Yeah.
What is your viewpoint on that?
I think that's a very dangerous idea of love
Yeah.
because love is meant to be sacrificial.
Mm.
You know, tolerance does not equal love, in my opinion. I don't have a kid, but if my kid wanted to go out and play in the rain,
Yeah.
I could probably let him go for a few minutes, but a loving father wouldn't let him play out in the rain for too long, right?
Yeah.
He knows the negatives that come along with it. He might
Yeah.
get sick, have pneumonia or something. So love doesn't always mean tolerance. Love means saying the thing that you know they're not going to like, but it's what's best for them at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why sometimes people leave the Christian faith is because they see all these rules set by God and they think, it just seems a bit controlling, it seems a bit abusive.
Yeah.
Let me just go away from it. And then a lot of people come back. They go live their own way, like the story of the prodigal son.
Yeah.
He got his inheritance, he left. And then after he realized why he did this, he came back.
Yeah.
And the best thing about Christianity is that when we go back, we have a father waiting there with open arms to receive us.
Mhm.
And we need to showcase that love to the people who are struggling in the world today. And I
Yeah.
think that's why we Christians should really become like teachers of love instead of, abusing it.
Yeah, true. As you said before, and that is where, most of the time, Christians actually get misunderstood
Yeah.
in one way or another.
Exactly, yeah.
Because what the Bible teaches us, love is not just about, accepting
Accepting or
things.
Yeah,
It
cool.
is biblical love is basically about, you know, loving someone such a way that, you want their highest good.
Exactly.
It is not about, thinking about what you can get out of it.
No.
It is about wishing the other person the best in their life, no matter how much wrong they have done to you.
Mhm.
Many times we hold that grudge in your heart.
Yeah.
We
Sure.
intentionally or unintentionally we do it.
Of course.
So that is something that is actually wrong in a lot of ways, because
Yeah.
we're actually going against what Jesus Christ has actually shown us.
Yeah, of course.
Because love is always about wanting, as I said, someone else's betterment.
Mhm.
It's also about encouragement, and it also means correcting someone when they are going wrong.
Of course, yeah.
And that is what Jesus Christ has shown us. That is he has checked box in all in a way. He has ticked all the boxes where he has shown us
Mhm.
what true love
True
is.
love is, yeah.
Since we're talking about Jesus Christ as the perfect example of love,
Yeah.
which is a moment
Mm.
in the Bible itself
Mhm.
where you have seen Jesus actually showing true love, or a powerful example that we can actually use in our day-to-day lives.
Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they're doing.
Yeah.
That moment on the cross, I think that summarizes what
Mm.
God's love truly encapsulates, and that is he's been tortured,
Yeah.
hung, fully put through the worst kind of torture
Yeah.
bearable to mankind, and he's on that cross looking down at people mocking him, and he's saying, "Forgive them." I don't know if that's humanly possible, is it?
Yeah.
It's something to go through that much pain
Yeah.
and to still say, "Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they are doing." I think that's the true embodiment of what I see in Jesus' life to be love, because he could have just. I feel like if we're looking at it from like because I watch a lot of movies.
Yeah.
We're looking at it from a movie perspective. This is the moment where a Calvary comes in and saves him, and
Yeah.
and he puts them in their place, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Told you should have believed me." But instead, he,
Yeah.
out of love, he said, "Forgive them," and it's through that love Christianity became one of
Yeah.
the largest faiths. Is it not? Like
Yeah.
I think that's how Christ conquered our hearts. It was not with the sword, it was with his
Love.
forgiveness and
Yeah.
love. Yeah.
As you were saying, one of the biggest examples, as you were saying as itself, that moment where he actually say, forgive them.
Yeah.
Imagine, I sometimes, think about when we're having the Lord's Supper,
Yeah.
when the pastor says, think about the hardships that Jesus Christ went on that cross.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, at times, I actually put myself in the shoes of Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
If I were, having that sort of powers,
Yeah.
and if I was hanging on that cross, I'd be like, as you said, it'd be like a
Exactly.
whole movie thing, it'd be
Yeah.
like a whole Hollywood
A
thing.
Game of Thrones, like
Yeah,
cavalry coming in.
basically, I wouldn't even need cavalry coming in. I would just be like, snap my fingers or just think about it, and I'll be off the cross
Course,
in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
But even then, when all these people were mocking him,
Mhm.
because you can say, all the people were passing by looking up at him and saying, if he's, the God of the Jews, let
Yeah.
the angels come and save him.
Yeah.
They kept mocking
I'm
him.
down on the cross. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
even then, he actually showed that humility, that humbleness, and be like, no, forgive them.
Yeah.
Because that is actually the biggest example of love. Also, other thing is, because Jesus Christ actually says, I came here for the sinners.
Yeah.
I'm not here for the people who are actually doing good.
Yeah. It's not the sick who.
Yeah, it is not the sick who need the doctor. It is not the healthy people who need
the
doctor.
doctor. It's the sick.
It is sick people,
exactly. Yeah.
When you think about my own life, when we talked about this topic, you brought out a topic that genuinely I've never thought about in a
Mhm.
lot of ways. We
Yeah.
have heard about love when pastors are preaching and everything. I was thinking about my own life, where I have not gone through hardships as Jesus Christ did. To be
course.
fair, none of us have
None of
gone
us
through
have,
it.
yeah.
What we go through is not even 1%, like
We live a very privileged
0.0001.
life compared to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the number of times when people have, done something to me, people who have really close to me,
Yeah.
have done something to me, and how many times have I actually lost the love that I have towards them.
Exactly.
And this topic is something that has actually made me think a lot, rethink a lot about my own life, where I have gone wrong.
Yeah.
And this is something that I hope will encourage our viewers out there as well, to rethink your own definitions of love and try to think of Jesus Christ as an example. Use him as a role model
Mhm.
for your love, your relationships in every aspect of your life.
And I think that's something that us Christians lack a lot nowadays as well. I mean, even if it's very hard to like love people who are actively trying to go against what you believe and go
Yeah.
against what you stand for. And I think this is where we should shine
Yeah.
with our mark. I think those moments of stress that we haven't experienced yet,
Yeah.
like the stress we experience is very little, like you said. So
Mm.
we should think, if Jesus could do that, why can't I do this?
Yeah.
We need to have that patience. Love is patience. So
Yeah,
we need to possess that.
Yeah, that is true. What you have said, when,
Yeah.
because when we think about the present world, there's lots of, teachings, where, people are being actually, encouraged to stay away from sinners. It is not about that. I wouldn't say, okay, the Bible says, to blessed are those who run away, like do not sit in the seat of, sinners, corners, and all of that stuff. It is true.
Yeah.
But then nowhere does it say do not love them.
No.
It is by showing your love that you have towards them, that are actually showing Jesus Christ. To them, you are, we, each and every one of us are the biggest mirrors or reflections of Jesus Christ in our
Yeah.
life. Because, just because, do not be selfish
Mhm,
in
yeah.
a way. Love is not about being selfish.
Of course, yeah.
Whatever love you have received,
You need to give it.
share it out to the others. Do
Exactly.
not keep it out into yourself. It is not about that. It is not what Jesus Christ has shown us.
Exactly, yeah.
Because Jesus Christ actually gave his last commandment before he ascended into heaven. Go to the four corners of the world and share the
Preach
gospel.
the gospel, yeah.
The gospel is about love.
Of course.
It is not just about doing things according to what the Bible has
Or
given us.
hellfire.
Yeah, it
or
is not just about heaven and hell.
Yeah.
It is also about showing people that love. That is something that the world actually needs right now.
Yeah.
Because a lot of issues could actually be avoided with a sprinkle of love on top of it.
Exactly. And to add on to what you said
Yeah.
before, you said we need to share that love, and it reminded me of a video I saw recently. Do you know Wes Huff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was the one who said it. He said there are 5 gospels.
Mm-hmm.
The 5th one is us.
Yeah.
And how people read us.
Yeah.
That's how they'll know Christ. So the first 4, they're written, but the 5th one will be us. And yeah, we need to share that love, especially nowadays, when there's so much division going on.
Yeah.
We're the ones that need to like stay neutral and say, we love both of you. Blessed are the peacemakers. That's
Yeah.
what God calls us to do. So I think, I just clarifying. I agree with you
Yeah.
regarding that. Yeah.
Yeah, true. What you've said is really true. One wrong thing that we are all actually taught is that love is a feeling.
Yeah.
I would say that love is not a feeling. Love is a
No.
choice.
Love is a choice. Yeah.
You choose who you love.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, okay, parents and kids, that's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the stuff, it is not actually a feeling that you have, it's actually a choice.
Choice. Yeah.
Because Jesus actually shows us that love is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
He chose to forgive.
Yeah.
He chose to serve. He chose to sacrifice himself, even
Mm-hmm.
when he could have done the opposite of everything that I've just mentioned.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even when it cost him everything, his life,
Yeah.
his honor, everything was lost when he was on the cross, when he was being beat up and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, he chose to love us.
Yeah. Exactly.
That is the biggest love there ever is. I read a lot.
Yeah.
Like not fiction, but like general
General.
books.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And somewhere I read this quote. Love isn't proven by what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Love is proven by what you do.
Yeah.
And
Your
that,
actions.
yeah, your
Mm.
actions actually show the love that you have.
Yeah.
That is what Jesus Christ chose to do over there.
Yeah.
That is why never think that love is just a feeling. Love is a choice that you actually make. You choose who to love.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it is not like you're just your hormones just start acting up and everything, and then it's just like, oh, I love you. No,
Yeah.
it is a choice. I choose to love someone. You choose to love someone. That is
Yeah.
we have free will.
Exactly.
Who to love, who not to love.
Yeah. And I think you touched upon something important there. I think you were referring to like the performative forms of love. And I
Yeah.
think when we started, we were talking about social media and everything.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people draw to the performative side of love. They
Yeah.
say, I love you, but deep down, they don't really mean it.
Yeah.
Because when your actions are going against what you're preaching,
Mhm.
and I've done this many times as well, so I'm guilty of it. Do you truly love? And that's something we need to revalidate every day. We need to
Yeah.
rethink about it every day. So we can, I don't know if we'll ever reach that point of love,
Mhm.
but we need to like set that as a goal and just keep working towards it, see how far we can get.
Yeah.
Yeah, just strive away from that performative form of love. Something we should all strive to do.
Yeah, it is not just about performance, as you were saying.
Yeah.
It is about actually meaning it.
I mean, yeah.
You can just act as if you love someone. You can
Mhm.
act as a perfect
Anyone
person.
could do that, yeah.
To be fair, we Christians actually could win multiple Oscars in a lot of ways.
Exactly, yeah.
In the way we live our lives, the way we actually preach things, but then
Mhm.
actually do the opposite
I
thing.
feel like we're the most guilty of it
Yeah,
as Christians as well.
Yeah,
Because
God
we
actually
have the
accounts-
right path and then
Yeah.
we don't.
Now, God actually holds us accountable for everything that we do.
Exactly.
Because on the judgment day, we'll be held accountable for everything that we're doing, whether it be good or bad.
Yeah.
That is a
exactly.
thought that should genuinely be there in our lives, every second of our life. Whenever we're doing something, choosing to say something or not,
Mhm.
God
Yeah.
is accounting that into our lives.
Sure. Yeah. Of course.
Moving on from there,
Mhm.
let's be honest over here, sometimes, as we were saying before, Christians talk about love a lot.
Mhm.
We talk about, in our, sermons and in a family life, we all talk about love.
Yeah.
But when it comes to practical, applications,
Mhm.
we, one way or another, we are actually not able to show it.
Yeah.
Why do you think that we actually suffer to do so? Like actually show that love in our practical life
And then
applications?
fail to do
Yeah.
in real life. I can speak for myself, but
Uh-huh.
a verse that resonated, like I know the answer to this for myself,
Uh-huh.
and I'm trying to think of the verse. It's bear with me a second. It's so someone asked Jesus, what should I do? Or what is the greatest commandment? Jesus says the greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, all your mind,
Mm.
all your soul, and then love
Love
your
your
neighbor
Yeah.
as yourself.
Yeah.
And and I've never really thought about this until I read it again the other day. We read that as love God, love neighbor.
Yeah.
But there's a final part to that. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Do you love yourself?
Yeah.
I moments in my life, I think about it a lot now, where I projected hatred. At those moments, I didn't love myself. I can't even say I fully love myself now.
Mhm.
So if you're not going to love yourself and value yourself as a creation of God, someone redeemed by Jesus,
Mhm.
how can you then project that love onto your neighbors, right? Like, so that verse is very important there because it shows that what we feel deep inside us will always be projected. We can't hide away from that. We can put as many performances as we want. But the people that truly know you, like your families, your close friends, they know what type of person you are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the base point of that is we need to love ourselves because we're redeemed by Christ.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have that sense of value that we give ourselves to then be projected onto everyone around us. I think that's what we're lacking. I think a lot of us deep down, we have a lot of insecurities,
Yeah.
a lot like we wonder if we're not as good as, because we're kind of like living in a world where everyone's trying to up
Yeah.
another in
Appearity.
terms of looks, money.
Yeah.
So I think we need to start by understanding that God loves us and we are loved. And we need to set our value on that and then work from there.
Yeah.
So that verse is something that really touched me. And for me,
Yeah.
I think that's the solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You, as you said, I've
Mhm.
never really thought about the second part of the end of that verse.
Yeah.
Love your neighbor as you love
As
yourself.
yourself, yeah.
Because when you are, we are almost the same age.
Yeah, yeah.
When we're going through life, when we're going through situations,
Hmm.
you will, when you go through certain hardships,
Yeah.
when life isn't as going as smoothly as you wish
Mhm.
that you actually wanted it to go, and then you're going through things, you actually lose that love that you have for yourself.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
recently, in my own life, I've been going through a lot of things, and where I've one way or another, where I feel like I hate myself at times, where I
Mm.
don't value myself,
Yeah.
and that is what you've said right now has actually made me think a lot right now, because life is, as you said, we are God's creation, we are the best creation that God has made,
Exactly. We're
out of
in his image.
everything, everything that he has created,
course.
because in Genesis it says, let us create man in our own image.
Our own image. And we're
In-
called the bride of Christ.
yeah,
Yeah.
we are the bride of Christ. God is
Yeah.
not someone who's going to make us, ugly in a way.
No,
God
no,
has
of
made
course
us, as perfect as He could. We are
Exactly.
all the image of Him,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just about the Trinity. It's about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We
Yeah.
are made. Each and every one of us is made in the image of the Trinity.
Yeah.
That is the biggest blessing that we could have, and therefore, never hate yourself.
Exactly.
Love yourself. In every moment of your life.
Yeah.
Also, as I was saying before, coming back to the question of why are we not actually able to show it? It's also about pride.
Yeah.
We, are, in a way, we are more interested in being right all the time
Mm-hmm.
than actually being loved or loving.
Yeah, that's true.
We actually want to say, I'm right.
Yeah.
That is the point that we actually try to put across, in every realm of our life. When you think about it deeply,
Yeah.
it is, we are more interested, in, winning arguments than actually winning people.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not saying that you should be people pleasers. That is, exactly the opposite of what I'm trying to say. It's not
No.
always about, getting into arguments about people,
Yeah.
with people. It's about, winning people over in such a way by living your life that is pleasing to God.
Mm-hmm.
Be God pleasers, not people pleasers.
Yeah.
That is a realm where, most of our youth are, failing.
Of course. Yeah.
We try to, go with the society most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
rather than, standing for God.
Standing for that. Yeah. And I think what you said about the arguments thing is very true because
Mhm.
even when we go online, we see all these debates.
Yeah.
And it's always Christian versus
Yeah,
or
something else.
someone versus. It's like a fight
Yeah.
where both people are equal. I don't believe that's how we Christians should look at it. I mean, we need to look at them as someone who's lost, a
Yeah.
brother who's lost, and have that sympathy and empathy towards them whenever we're trying to communicate an idea
Yeah.
or about Jesus. We're not there to we're not there to own them or destroy them. Because that's what you see in these videos.
Yeah.
Someone owns, someone got destroyed.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right approach for us. We need to, it's about educating people
Yeah.
through our actions and through our faith that Christ is the answer to all the problems in this world. And I think for a lot of young people, even myself, I'm guilty of this. I used to argue a lot
Mhm.
back in the days online as well about things that were not really worth arguing about.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was very passionate about God when I was younger. I used to make videos about the 7 trumpets, the revelations,
Mm.
about the Antichrist and everything, but I had no love in my heart. I just
Yeah.
made these things because these were performative things that I thought might have made me look like I'm a good Christian. But
Yeah.
deep down, I knew I had no love in my heart because when I go to sleep, I'm there like, okay, but I feel horrible now.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important. As Christians, we need to separate ourselves instead
Yeah.
of going against them like
Yeah.
like a boxing match, like they throw a punch, we throw a punch.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right approach for us.
Yeah. As you're saying, it is about separating ourselves in such a way that, you do not get into a debate with people
Yeah.
about each and everything.
Exactly, yeah.
Because nowhere does God say, go and debate the gospel. It's about spreading the
Spreading
gospel.
the gospel, yeah.
Also in the Bible itself, God, when Jesus Christ is sending out his disciples,
Yeah.
he says, and if a town doesn't receive you,
Yeah.
shake
Wipe
the
your
dust off
feet
your
and
feet and then get out.
get
Then
out.
that dust will actually testify against that town
Mm-hmm.
on the judgment day.
Because the reality is a lot of people's pride won't allow them to accept whatever you're preaching to them.
Yeah.
They've already have their answers stored in their mind.
Yeah.
Whatever you say, it's not going to change their mind. So just leave.
Yeah.
Go to the next person.
Yeah.
So
With the onset of COVID, after the COVID, hit,
Mhm.
social media has actually been something that has given a platform for anyone and no one.
exactly.
It has
yeah.
become a place, where people actually, as you said before, destroy each other.
Mhm.
Because, yes, social media, God has actually given, I'm not saying that I'm against social media,
Of course not.
because nowhere does, I'm not saying that. It's about, using.
How you use it.
Yeah, it's about using it
anything.
in grace.
Exactly, yeah.
It is.
And what are you using it for?
Yeah, it is not always about getting into arguments and fighting all the time.
Like, for example, us, we're using it for...
Yeah,
we're using it for good, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
So-
That's what we are hoping for.
Exactly.
Because basically, I have seen Christians, like friends of mine,
Mhm.
friends of mine, and I've people that I know,
Mhm.
who actually, brutally, say stuff in the comment section or post something on their Twitters and X platforms and everything.
Yeah.
And then, they actually quote Bible verses soon after that as well. Then you're like, what sort of spirit actually rules over them?
Mhm.
Because
yeah.
the Holy Spirit that God has given on us, it is about love.
Yeah, yeah.
It is not about spreading hatred or debating or getting into arguments and proving that, I'm right all the time.
Mhm.
Because know that, no one is perfect.
No one is. yeah.
None of us are perfect. Now, I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. None of our viewers are perfect either.
Of course, yeah.
We are trying to be perfect. As Paul said, I'm trying to be as Christ. I'm nowhere
Mhm.
close.
Nowhere close, yeah.
In that same way, it is not about being perfect all the time. It is about trying, in such a way it's through heart. It is
Mhm.
not just about trying to be perfect on Sundays
Mhm.
and on the other, meetings that you have throughout the week. It is about being perfect 24/7, 365 days of the year.
That's the thing.
And, as I said before, it is use your social media platforms and everything that you have with grace.
Yeah.
Because wherever you are, your social media life, your private life, your professional life, everything actually is, holding a mirror onto Christ and showing the reflection of what Christ is
Yeah.
to the others, to your peers, to your colleagues,
Exactly, yeah.
to everyone out there.
You're the fifth gospel.
Yeah, we are the fifth gospel, as you said. As I was saying, in Paul actually says in 1 Corinthians chapter 13,
Yeah.
if I speak with the tongues of men and angels but have not love, I am nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
That is, a powerful statement. You may have the knowledge of the Bible, like you might, have deep knowledge about the Bible. You might be preaching 24/7. You might be good at, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
You can have the gift of the Holy Spirit. You can have influence to move people with what you say.
Yeah.
But without the love of Christ in you, you have missed a point.
Exactly.
Your whole ministry is a big zero.
Exactly, yeah.
Because Christ is about love, and therefore in everything that you do, it should also be about love.
Yeah. And during that time of Jesus, people that used to preach and study the word a lot were the Pharisees, the Sadducees. And Jesus pointed out these were the people with the least amount of love in their
Yeah.
hearts. And like even when they were going to stone the prostitute, Jesus was the one that said, "He who is without sin cast the first
Yeah.
stone." Because he saw their hearts. He can see the performance. The
Yeah.
performance is something that we can see, but God weighs the heart.
Yeah.
And that's something we as Christians should always realize, that at the end of the day, no matter what you say in public, like even what we say now, this could be for the camera.
Mhm.
We could not be acting like this behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But God can see that.
Yeah.
And having that fear of God, I think kind of naturally puts you on a path to loving God as well. Then you
Yeah.
understand what his will for you at the end of the day as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because last Sunday, in the church, our pastor was talking about Herod and John the Baptist. Many times, our love or our Christianity is basic like Herod.
Mhm.
When because it says John the Baptist was someone Herod was someone who was actually scared of John the Baptist,
Yeah.
because of what he was preaching, and he actually enjoyed what was being preached.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to reality, what did he do? He actually beheaded
Mm-hmm.
John the Baptist because of what his daughter actually asked him to do.
Yeah.
And that actually shows, how the contrasting sides of, the faith that we have in the present world.
Yeah.
Many times, when we listen to certain, sermons and everything, we are like, oh my God, I'm going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
But 5 minutes later, where is our life? Where is the love that we have actually experienced before?
Yeah.
We
Right.
keep it to ourselves, and we never share it out to the world out there.
Yeah. Exactly.
That is a big, thing that we should all think about in our day-to-day lives. Where is my love? Where is my Christian life going?
Mm-hmm.
You know. Anyway, we have talked about, practical steps.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the teens and youths who are out there.
Mm-hmm.
According to you, someone who was, born and brought up over here in this country, what are some unique challenges, you as a youth or your peers have faced, when it comes to love?
Mm-hmm.
What are some challenges that you can actually give out there?
Um. Well, as a boy, love is often like looked as in like a like if you love, you're weak,
Mm,
in like a bad light in some areas.
yeah.
It's they try to associate to like femininity rather than masculinity.
Yeah.
So growing up, it wasn't really something people would always, talk about very openly. I mean, even as kids, boys, we insult each other.
Hmm.
But what I notice with girls is they compliment each other a lot more than boys
Yeah.
boys do. And I think this is something that I've come across as well. So the idea of love wasn't really at the top of my head growing up, but there was an easy way to fix that, and it's if I read the Bible every day.
Yeah.
The Psalms chapter 1 says, "He who meditates the scripture is like a tree planted by streams of water, which
Yeah.
yields its fruit in its season." And I had the tools, but I didn't use it because I was pulled into the world a lot more back
Yeah.
in the day than I am than I am now. And
Yeah.
think, yeah, I guess looking at love as a weakness, it's a weakness to forgive.
Yeah.
It's weak to be patient. It's weak to not like want to live a lavish life or try to get to the top, try to be the top dog or best
Yeah.
at something. It's weak to be like that or just step aside for some moments. And
Yeah.
I think in everything, you have to understand if these people looked at Jesus and judged him, they would probably see Jesus as weak as well
Yeah.
because he died on a cross. One of the worst punishments. It's one of the worst punishments
Most
during
of the
those
time,
times.
yeah.
Yeah. So we need to really. So that's what I made. That's my mistake. Not abandoning the world's idea of what it means to be, a human. Really,
Yeah.
God's way was, at the end of the right way. And I wish I did it when I was younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing, is about, comparison. Basically, for me, being
Yeah.
born in a Kerala setting, like I was born and brought up in Saudi, but even then,
Yeah.
when you're born and brought up in that sort of a
The
family,
Malu.
Mallu family,
Yeah.
a comparison culture is a big thing.
Yeah.
We, our parents, even if you get, let's say, 95 out of 100, and, your family friend actually gets 97, your parents will be like, see, look at him and learn.
Yeah.
That actually shows, a big issue where we
Yeah.
actually feel hated towards that person. See, I've got 95. I'm still in that top list. Why should I actually be more
And
than that?
hatred for yourself as well.
Yeah,
And this is
you're
a
like,
huge
why couldn't I
problem,
have
isn't
done
it?
more?
Yeah.
That is something, comparison actually quietly kills love.
Exactly. And it's engraved into our lives from a very young age, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like, why didn't you get as much as him?
Yeah. Another thing is, even with our social media platforms, when you look about it, in schools, in colleges, in unis,
Yeah.
people compare, how many likes, how many comments, how
Followers,
many followers.
engagement,
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Your interaction with your social media friends gets, compared a lot with others.
And that becomes your value.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
becomes, you are valued in that list.
Mhm.
It is very hard to celebrate, others, because as I said before, love is always about, wishing someone the
Exactly.
best.
Yeah.
But when comparison comes into it,
You can't do it.
yeah, you can't do it. You just,
Because it makes you look weak,
yeah,
right?
you measure yourself with someone else. Okay, I'm below him, I'm above him.
Yeah.
And then you compare yourself in such a way that, you actually kill love over there.
Exactly, yeah.
And that is a big, thing that,
think you're
people are
spot
facing
on.
right now.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like this, and I think, like you pointed out, I think our parents are kind of a big big factor to us, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, because from a young age, you're meant to show your children that regardless of what
What?
they do or what they get, that
Yeah.
you love them. Isn't that what God does with us, right?
Yeah.
We sin 1,000 times, He forgives us 1,000
Mm.
times, but we don't see that love. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like a generational problem, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
from the beginning of mankind. I guess it was like that.
Yeah.
But I think as Christians, we need to break that cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should actually, change that cycle when it comes to, our following generations.
Yeah.
Another challenge that, kids right now are facing out there in this country, in the UK setting or, English speaking countries, loneliness.
Hmm.
Many times, you might be surrounded by people, but, you feel isolated.
Yeah.
That is something that, each and every one of us have faced. Even myself, being honest, I might be surrounded by, hundreds of people, but most of the time, I feel lonely.
Yeah.
You might be surrounded by people who are actually loving you and everything, but then
Mhm.
even you feel like you're not seen, you're not heard.
Yeah.
Now that is where the a church actually has an incredible role over there when it comes to teens and youths who are actually facing loneliness.
Hmm.
you know the church should be the community that should actually offer the biggest love
Yes.
towards the teens,
Yeah.
because teens and youth, they're living in a country where peer pressure is so much more than what we have faced.
Yeah.
What we have faced so far is nothing to what the
They
present
face.
generation is facing. It'll be
course.
much more what the next generation is facing.
Yeah.
And as a church, no matter, it should not be about saying that okay, that so and so is doing this and that, therefore let's keep him away. It's not about that.
Of course not.
No, it's about winning them over with love.
Yeah.
Because as you said before, if Jesus Christ is a perfect example of it.
Yeah.
Because a number of times that we have actually scorned at the face of Jesus Christ's love for us.
Yeah.
Going back to the point of if I were Christ,
Mhm.
if I were Christ and people were sinning after everything that I've done
Hmm.
for you, you're still sinning, you're still laughing at my face, I'll be like, okay, that is done.
Yeah.
Because, in the Bible itself, it says Jesus Christ is standing at the right hand of God.
Hmm.
He's interceding for us over there.
Exactly. He's
That
like our
is the true
lawyer.
love.
Yeah.
That is the best sort of love that you can have. So no matter, how lonely you feel,
Yeah.
the church should actually play the biggest role in trying to get, the teens and youths out of their, loneliness.
Loneliness. Yeah.
Because, people might be boondy, it's normal, you have your good days and your dark days,
Yeah.
but even then it's by love that you actually pull them out of those moody and dark days.
Yeah.
And, when I first came to this country,
Yeah.
I was, I came back in 2022 and I moved to High Wycombe, like last year, 2025.
Hmm.
When I first came to this country, my first thought was, how good would the church be?
Hmm.
Because I want a place where I would not be judged,
Yeah.
where I'll not be ignored, not labeled,
Yeah.
but, somewhere that I would actually feel as a part of a family.
Yeah.
That is the biggest role a church plays, because a church is a
course.
family.
It is a family. Yeah.
So the churches are that are listening to us. One biggest message or a request that I would have towards all the churches that are out there is show love.
Yeah.
You are the biggest example that the teens and youths can actually learn.
We should be the teachers of love. 'cause
Yeah.
We're the ones that were given the provision for it, really. We're the ones that truly know it and experienced it. So
Yeah.
we're the ones that should be the experts on it. So I think that's to add to what you said, I think, yeah.
Yeah, because as we were talking before, in John, the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 35, it says, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another."
Exactly.
It is not about a denomination.
Mm.
It is not about your worship style. It is not about your social media platforms.
Yeah.
It is actually about love.
Yeah. Love one another as Christ loved us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is, the biggest, takeaway that you can take from this, be loving to one another.
Mhm.
No matter how many times you've been wronged by the same person over and over again, love them.
Just keep doing it. 'cause
Yeah.
Jesus did it. Why can't we?
Yeah,
I think
because
that's
it
how we should
says,
look at it.
if I can forgive you, one time, why can't you forgive it for 7 times?
Yeah.
There's a
it's-
verse
Peter was like, how many times should I
Yeah,
forgive my
forgive someone.
brother? And
Yeah.
he said, 7 times? No, 77 times.
Yeah. So that is, the thing that God is actually showing us. No matter how many times you've been wronged by the same
Mhm.
person, love them.
Love them.
Let's get practical now.
Sure.
What are some simple ways, young Christians can show Christ-like love,
Mhm.
in their day-to-day activities?
I think, okay, I saw a message from a pastor a long time ago. His name was Vlad. He's very popular.
Mhm.
And he said that one thing as teenagers and youth we can do best is to, like he said, serve in the church and
Mhm.
obey our parents, because we don't have any other responsibilities right now.
Yeah.
The way we can do best uh, in regards with love is just do what we're told by our peers, so our parents. Obey them completely.
Yeah.
That's what God expects from us.
Yeah.
Every little area, and actively get involved in church. I think that itself shows a form of love to God. And I think not here, but there are many churches where the youths are not actively involved in many areas of the ministries where they could be involved. And I think it's a very good way to practically apply that into their lives. Just get involved with the church.
Yeah.
Get part in the ministry. We do outreaches back my church near Brighton.
Yeah.
It's something I sometimes I felt like I didn't want to go, but at the end of the day, I looked at it like, what am I doing at the end of the day? I'm not doing this to look good.
Yeah.
I'm doing this for God.
Yeah.
Like, so we need to have the youth fixated with that mindset that,
Yeah.
you're doing this for God. And I think it goes back to that first verse I told you. The greatest commandment is to love God.
Mm.
That's the greatest commandment first. And then is to love your neighbors.
Yeah.
Because true love comes from God, I
Yeah.
think. And I cannot but not link this again to the scriptures. We need to meditate on His word day and night. We need to get closer to God. We need to have the Holy Spirit more active in our lives. We need to pray more. It might sound cliched, but those are the main
Simple
points.
steps.
The simple steps are the most useful sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Some of the other simple ideas that I can give you is, check on a friend.
Mhm.
Forgive someone no
Yeah.
matter how many times you've been wrong.
Random act of kindness.
Yeah.
or something.
Encourage people.
Yeah.
And many times, we join the gang when someone gets bullied and we bully the person. It's not about that. It's being separate from them, actually showing them love, giving them that encouragement.
Yeah.
Just pray for someone, as you said.
Mhm.
Invite someone who's always seen to be left out.
Mm.
And, as you were saying before about, serving God and everything. When you're serving God, do it in such a way that you're not expecting people to recognize what you're doing, where you seek validation out of what you're trying to do.
Exactly. Rather recognize God
Yeah.
through what you're doing.
Yeah, it is not always about promoting my name. Through this podcast, we are not trying to promote Sam's name or Jeffrey's name.
No.
We're trying to promote God.
God, yeah.
That is, what our major goal should be.
Mhm.
And
course.
many times, we expect, big grandeur when it comes to love.
Yeah.
We want the big shows, big stuff, big expensive gifts and everything. It is
Yeah.
not.
Performing.
Yeah, it's not always about that. Love is something that should be ordinary.
Mhm.
It's not always, a grand gesture, as I said. It's just about being present.
Being there for them. Yeah.
Yeah, being
Might
there
be
for
just
someone.
to check on them. Have you ate today?
Yeah,
How are you feeling? Do you
yeah,
want me to come over? Do you want to pray? The simple things.
yeah,
I think that's what showcases love the most.
yeah. And, also, when we come to our church, if you don't see one of your believers at church,
Mm-hmm.
take that first step to message them and ask, okay, hey, I didn't see you at church today.
Mhm.
You good? What's up?
Yeah.
Are you fine? Is it work? Just it's that small acts that actually show the love. Do not do this just to be like someone will say okay, that person texted me that day. No, it should not be about that.
Yeah.
It should be actually about doing it in such a way that out of genuineness. You should be genuine in love. That is the thing I want to live out there. Now let's conclude.
Sure.
I want to live every one of our viewers out there with this challenge. Who in your life, you should ask this question to to yourself out there. Who in my life needs God's love through me this week? That is the question that I want you to ask yourself.
Yeah.
It can be a friend, it can be a family member, it can be someone who's older than you, someone younger than you.
Mm-hmm.
It can be someone you have been avoiding for quite a long time.
Yeah.
It can even be someone who's hurt you a lot, who's bullied you. What I want you to think about it is, so that you can actually show that love
Mm-hmm.
and win people over for Christ.
Exactly. Yeah.
The world is, it doesn't need any more arguments.
No.
It's got
Needs
plenty
less
of
of
it.
it.
Yeah, it's got plenty of it going around right now.
Course.
What the world actually needs right now is, more Christians who are actually like Christ or
Yeah.
striving to be like Christ.
Christ-like.
Yeah, and Jesus, loved us, relentlessly, even when it was difficult, even when
Yeah.
it cost him a lot, his own
Exactly.
life.
Sacrificial love.
Yeah, even
Yes.
when it was not deserved for him,
Of
because he
course.
was blameless and he
Mhm.
died for our sins.
Yeah.
That is the love that God has shown to us. In Romans 5, chapter 8, it says, God demonstrates its own love for us in this.
Or
While
died
we were
for
still
us.
sinners,
Yes.
Christ died
Died
for
for our
us.
sins.
That
Yeah.
is the gospel,
Mhm.
and that is true love.
Amen.
So if this episode has encouraged you in any way, show that or take that first step towards actually loving your near ones, make sure that you do it first.
Yeah.
That is the first step that I want to encourage all our viewers out there. Thank you, Sam,
Yeah.
for
Perfect.
being a part of this. You've been lovely. It is good to have
Thank
a
you,
chat with
Jeffrey.
you.
It was nice talking with you as well.
Yeah, no problem.
Mhm.
And if this episode is helping you out, or if you think that any of your friends or peers actually need this, be sure to share this with them. Until next time, this is me, Jeffrey, signing off. Thank
Thank
you.
you.